I'd like to get us started. And I have a confession. I am completely unprepared to introduce these two people. I feel really terrible, but I can say a couple of words extemporaneously. I remember very clearly meeting Rosemary Gibson, who is just an extraordinary force in healthcare. She's written several very important books about various aspects, starting with a book about patient safety. And I met her at an event at the Informed Medical Decisions Foundation, and I remember this sort of intensity that was coming out of you, but not being verbalized. And I didn't understand where it was coming from. Now I do. Because Rosemary very early on saw the big picture of what's been going on in healthcare, the many, many aspects that we're all talking about today. And I think I feel the same way. Sometimes I can barely contain my desire to speak out about it, and sometimes to speak very sharply about it. And so I've appreciated you more and more the more I know you, Rosemary. Thank you for all your good work. And Dan is got a heck of a hard job at, even for a small town, I know. And so I'm so much looking forward to what the two of you are going to talk about right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Just as a little background, I had the privilege and honor of being at the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation for about 16 years, and that's where I had the joy of meeting Diane, and I led our national effort, $250 million effort to bring palliative medicine in the mainstream. And that really was a wonderful social, medical, other movement, and it's really gotten some traction legs. And you know what motivated it was we brought joy and meaning in people's lives, both patients, families, as well as physicians and nurses and others. And then it turned my attention now to the world of patient safety. When the IOM report came out, who else? You know, you have to pay attention to that. And so anyway, we're here today. I'm delighted that Dan could join us from China, Maine. He drove down on just late last night. And I'll tell you how we got this session, thought about this session today. The inception of it was back in April when I had the pleasure of spending time at the annual meeting of a group called Maine Quality Counts. How many are from Mainers here? There we go, good contingent. And I was so impressed with this group of people that there were 783 people that came together in April in Maine for this annual event. And I had the pleasure of meeting Dan, who is chair of the board of Maine Quality Counts. That's what he does in his spare time. And I was so impressed with how he was trying to manage and balance the health care of his employees with all the other things. And there are very few people who work in these positions of government, whether local, state, or national, who really have a sense of health care as Dan does through Maine Quality Counts. And so we thought it would be a great venue to launch our discussion, to bring these conversations into, I think, Vikas, you said yesterday, civil society. How do we bring them out to the public? So Dan, welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for the invitation. Appreciate it.
So Dan, tell us about Maine Quality Counts. What is it?
Maine Quality Counts is a multi-stakeholder collaborative in Maine, and I represent, as board chair, consumers in that group. And a primary focus of Quality Counts is on quality improvement initiatives. Some of the initiatives that the Maine Quality Counts is involved in currently are through the kindness of Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, the Aligning Forces for Quality, the Patient Center Medical Home Pilot, community care teams, the integration of behavioral health and physical health, and Choosing Wisely. There's many others, but those are some of the main ones.
So you're working on Choosing Wisely up in Maine.
Yes.
Yeah, I think you were at a point where you're identifying the top 5 things that you would work on in Maine. Is that sort of unfolding?
It is, and we have an individual here that is working in Maine on the Choosing Wisely campaign, Kelly.
Yeah. Wonderful. Now, you have a real job, though, and that's as town manager of this beautiful community, and it's right here on Google Maps, and it's just north of, how far is it from Augusta, Dan?
It's about 12 miles northeast of Augusta and 12 miles southeast of Waterville.
There we go. And then here's a little bit closer. Here's the town, and here's this beautiful lake here called China Lake. Just to give you a sense, and so you can see how rural this community is. And there's a picture of it. And that's Dan's office. This is real life, ladies and gentlemen. So Dan, tell us about how big China, Maine is.
China, Maine is 4,300 year-round residents. In Maine, there are only about 25 municipalities that have over 6,500 people. So it's one of a group of many, over 450 like China, Maine, in Maine.
And I was looking on Saturday night at the National League of Cities. There's more than 2,000 communities around the country that are small like China, Maine. But you have a lot of healthcare issues that you have to deal with in terms of dollars and cents. In fact, one of the things that really struck me at the Maine Quality Counts meeting was when you said in your opening remarks, now this was really stunning to me, in a community that small, and you had 11 employees at that time?
Yes.
That you were spending $200,000 a year just on health insurance premiums for those 11 employees.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, oh my goodness, just for 11 people.
The 11 people were 200,000, and of those 11, there were several of them who only had a single subscription health care.
Oh, they were a single person, they weren't,
Yeah,
they had
single
dependents,
person.
yeah.
They didn't have either a significant other or dependent children. So if they were all in the category of having dependents, it would have increased the premiums by about $60,000 or $65,000 more.
So $265,000 to cover about 11 people in a rural community in Maine.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at the median household income in China, Maine. It was about $50,000. So we're talking about a huge chunk. This is real money. And that's if all employees had dependents. The cost would be about $23,000 per employee. Just enormous sums of money. So Dan, we talked about this conversation and how we want to make the invisible visible. There are trade-offs made every day. So if we're spending up to $23,000 per employee for health insurance, there's a lot of other things that you have to do as a manager in your community. And there are trade-offs that you have to make every single day, every single budget. And I just want to do a quick detour, 700 miles south to suburban New York, which is where I grew up. This is my grade school, the Schubert School, about a half a mile from my house. And I'll even show you my kindergarten classroom. It's right here. Mrs. Damon. And I remember on Christmas, she sent a Christmas card to all the kids with a little mustard seed in it, with a parable of the mustard seed. So this beautiful school, the school had to close, along with another school in our town of about 26,000 people. That year, health insurance premiums in this school district had gone up 27% in 1 year. Enormous sums of money for communities that are not huge, even if they're big. And this was really interesting. So what happens when you have to cut budgets? And so I don't live in this town anymore. My mother passed away in 2006, and we sold the house, and that was it. But I have some nostalgia, so I go back and I check in to see how life has changed. And so what do the kids do to save their after-school music programs and sports programs? They started fundraising. And one of the fundraisers they did is they went out and they collected used shoes. It turns out you can make some money. So these kids raised $6,200 by collecting 15,500 pairs of used shoes weighing more than 7 tons to keep their after-school programs, because healthcare was eating into the school budget. And this is a picture of the truck that came to carry away the shoes. And by the way, you can see that the trailer is from Maine, And you can bet that they're going up to Maine to be processed. And then they're resold somehow. This is what's happening in the day-to-day. You know, these buildings look nice, we drive through our towns, but what's really happening underneath? These invisible decisions that are being made because of how we're spending money on healthcare. Yeah, and last year 15 teachers were laid off, and what's going to happen in the future? And meanwhile, as I was hearing about all of this, you hear the Department of Labor reports about how employment has gotten better and people are being employed in the health sector. Well, if you don't have a growing economy, if you have growth in employment in healthcare, it means you're taking jobs from one place and just giving it to another. It's just reshuffling the deck chairs. I rob Peter to pay Paul. What do you do for a living? So this is what we're doing. We're just reshuffling. We don't, in an absence of a really, growing economy. So back to China, Maine. So Dan, we've been talking about the trade-offs that you as a town manager have to make sure you account for the health and safety of your 4,300 people who live in your community. Tell us about some of those. Oh, and by the way, let me just say, Don Berwick kind of set us up for this yesterday. I don't know if you caught this line, but he was looking at the state budget. How many of you caught that? And he says every line item has gone down in the past 10 years, while healthcare has increased 59%. That's happening all over. And by the way, if we keep doing what we're doing, this is an old, forgive me, I don't have an updated one from the CBO, and this is probably moderated since healthcare spending has moderated in the last couple of years. Based on historical spending trends, according to the CBO, this was an Appendix D of an old report, we'll be spending 99% of our GDP on healthcare by 2082. Why? Because there's nothing to stop it. These are really, really important conversations we have to have about resource allocation. So Dan, tell us about some of the trade-offs that you're having to make every day.
Well, to respond to that question, a couple of things come to mind. In the last decade, the healthcare costs in China have gone up 152%, when the budget for that same period, the gross budget, went up 41%. So you can see that there needs to be some trade-offs when one area of a budget consumes more than the other areas. So as a result, and I might say that healthcare costs or healthcare benefits are the last items that an entity will touch. They will decrease other budgets, other areas of budgets. They will try to be more efficient as possible, and so forth. So a couple examples would be, up till now, we used to overlay or resurface our roads in China every 8 years, up to about 3 years ago. And now those roads, that pavement schedule is being bumped to 10 and 11 years. And what you see in this picture is what we call crack seal. So we fill the cracks in the road to extend the life of the road for a few years until we can overlay it. And if we don't fill those cracks, the water will get in, it'll freeze, and it'll continue to deteriorate the road. And that's particularly important in China to have safe roads, because between 84 and 87% of those people who live in China and are employed, they work outside of China. And they travel to work all hours of the day and night. So you can see there's a trade-off there.
David, when I saw this, I thought, well, this looks like a nice bucolic road, in rural Maine. And I never knew what those squiggly lines were until I figured out this is like putting masking tape. If the foundation of your house is cracking, and you put masking tape on those cracks until you have the money to go in and repair it, and meanwhile the cracks get bigger and bigger and the water comes in.
Yes.
So these are some of the trade-offs. But you also talked about some like the fire department and some essential equipment that you wish that you had but don't.
I think everybody might remember the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. Well, because of that, and only because of that, and in some successful grant applications, we were able to upgrade some of our equipment. Had that not come along, we would have been using 1970s vintage fire pumper tankers. And I just remember the other day where one of our volunteer fire department chiefs came to the select board and announced that they were buying a used truck from another fire department in Pennsylvania. And it was going to be a significant upgrade. And that purchase was a 1985 pumper tanker. So it was a great upgrade. But some of the other things that
There was a
happened-
safety equipment that you were talking about. This sounds like it's really an extraordinary safety thing for firefighters in your community.
Yes, and up until another grant, successful grant application, we were using 20-plus-year-old SCBA equipment. If you don't know what that is, it's self-contained breathing apparatus equipment, and firefighters use that when they go into the fire. And some of the 20-year-old equipment, for instance, will have a gauge that you look at on your arm or your waist that tells you how much oxygen is left in the tanks, or it'll tell you how long you've been in there, and you're only supposed to stay in so long, so you have to keep an eye on that so you can exit the fire, and others can relieve you and go in. But you can imagine when somebody goes in and they're crawling on their hands and knees, and it's all smoke all around, you know, how are they going to discern what's going on with that gauge, et cetera? And we were able to replace it with the new equipment because of the ARRA funds, where that information will be digitally displayed on the insides of the mask that the firefighters use. So we had been, up until this last fall, using some of the antiquated equipment. And those are the type of things where, you know, the allocation of resources come in, and sometimes they'll say, well, we can hang on for another year.
Right, and the police, so what's been happening is healthcare's been consuming a larger and larger share of your overall budget, and the other line items have gone down in real terms because of inflation, so this is the consequence. I mean, if it weren't for the federal stimulus money, you'd still be having this old equipment because you couldn't afford it.
Yes, the recreation budget, the police budget, the streetlight budget, and so forth have remained almost flat for 10 years. I mean, the police budget might have gone up 5% in 10 years. So 0.5% a year. And that's because we have to pay our part-time police officer a little bit more each year. But many of the department budgets are roughly equivalent to one subscription of health care for an employee, which is about $20,000.
So your whole Parks and Recreation Department is the equivalent of insurance premium for one person.
Yeah, $20,000. The police budget's 23, the cemetery budget's 20, and they don't go up.
And last thing, this is a private library in Maine. In China, Maine, you have two sort of private libraries. And one thing you wrote in your email to me is that one of the things the citizens would like is, again, this is all done by volunteers and, you know, the beautiful part of America. But the community would love to have bathroom facilities and running water in the library. But maybe that's on the wish list, right?
Yes, they want a centrally located single library that's open more than 11 hours a week.
Right. So the question becomes then, where does all that healthcare money go that's being spent? I don't know if any of you had a chance to look at the blog essays that Dr. Lown has on his website, and they're really exquisite. And I couldn't resist taking an excerpt from one of them and putting them here, because it really states, you know, what are we doing in part with we do some wonderful things. You do some wonderful things every single day. But what else are we doing? And he wrote, in our market culture, the patient looms large as a commodity to be seduced by medicalization, to be showered with drugs, subjected to endless tests, image to expose hidden recesses of anatomy, probed by magical genetic analyses, and salvaged by so-called life-saving interventions. You, the patient, with real or imagined dysfunctional biological machinery, is largely present, but you, the sentient human being, is largely absent. So that's where a lot of this money is being spent on these things, and that's what's the avoidable care is all about. You know, I've given a lot of thought to this topic of overuse, and I don't know, how many of you are cooks? How many of you have ever marinated meat? What's an essential ingredient of marinating meat? You need an acid, like a vinegar or lemon or yogurt, right? What does that do? It tenderizes the meat, right? And how does it tenderize? It literally breaks down the cell structure. It changes the cell composition. And I'm thinking about how our minds have been so affected we're swimming in all of this thing called overuse. And I describe it as our minds have been marinated to believe all of this, to live in it and breathe it. So I wrote in this book, The Treatment Trap, our minds are marinated in news, so-called news, marketing, television dramas, and internet advertising. Surgery becomes palatable. Do you know, on the internet, we can watch human bodies being cut open in a live broadcast of surgery. It becomes attractive to take a pill advertised on television that has side effects that can kill. Our minds have been reset to believe that it's okay. And we become disconnected from the reality of what we allow others to do to our bodies. You know, one of the things I've struggled with over the last couple of years is, you know, why is it, and this comes out of the safety world, when medical errors first came out back in 2000 with the IOM report, there was some initial pushback, some of you might remember, about errors, but there was such a momentum of people that came out and spoke about the harm from errors. And I haven't seen that yet about overuse. It's a lot harder. Not all overuse causes harm, but some of it does. And so I tried to figure out, why is it so hard to talk about the harm from overuse? And so I picked up the phone one day and I called Dr. Richard Selzer, who he was a surgeon at Yale, and he wrote the wonderful book, Notes on the Art of Surgery. Have any of you ever read his writings? And so I asked him, I said, how can this be? What's going on here? How is it that a surgery can be performed on a patient when it's not necessary? And he thought about it for a minute, and he says, well, we don't see it. And I asked him why. And he said, it's too painful. The things that I've learned from Diane in palliative care and other colleagues in that field, from the patient safety world, is it takes courage to go there and look. And that moment of awakening can be very challenging. As I was saying to Rabbi Edris last night, redemption is possible. We can go there and we can go look and see what it is that we're really doing. And this is how we're spending money. You know, we were saying last night, some of us, that in a lot of communities, healthcare is really good for the economy. It's the only place that might be hiring now. But you know, at some point, in economics, some of you took economics courses 101 with a law of diminishing returns, that for each additional dollar that you spent, you get decreasing value. And I think that's what we're see happening with overuse. And at some point, the overuse that harms is actually negative productivity, whether it's days lost from work, opportunity costs, the human suffering. So we have some diminishing returns here, even though it looks like we're creating jobs. Maybe this was meant to be, but when I was preparing these remarks on Saturday night, I have a very boring life, you know, so I was doing this on Saturday night, thinking of all of you. I got a phone call from a gentleman who I met a couple weeks prior at a Consumers Union Safe Patient Project 10th anniversary coming together. And he used to be a colonel in the Air Force and fly big planes, like John Nance over here. And he joined the ranks involuntarily of the 11 million long-term unemployed because of harm from overuse. He went in for surgery. He had his prostate removed using a during a robotic surgery. And I won't go into all the details, but in retrospect, 5 years later, he realizes that he was medically inappropriate, should not have had it, and there were a series of errors in the course of that treatment. And he said, I used to fly the big jumbo jets, but he says, now I can't even go out and mow my lawn. So this overuse does have impacts on our society financially, emotionally, unemployment. This is our human capital. And the irony is we're paying for it. This is what adds up into the part of the health insurance premiums that Dan and other communities and individuals are struggling to pay. I think this is an example of what some have called privatized gain and socialized loss. Society loses something when this happens. And I wrote about that in Medicare Meltdown, how Wall Street and Washington are ruining Medicare and how we can fix it. And finally, this wonderful quote, the reason I found it most transformative in my career, the most transformative work has been talking with patients and family members about their experience of care, good, bad, and in between. And I'll never forget Dee Dee Valier. She's the wife of a gentleman who was on the roof cleaning his gutters, and he fell off and the ladder and broke his leg and hurt his back. He went to the hospital. He was supposed to be in there for 3 days. It turned out 3 months after he got 3 different infections, and her work was instrumental in helping him recover. But they had all these bills coming to their house. And she said something so profound about our system that we just don't see. It's like that water that someone said. We're living in the water. She said they harm you and they bill you for it. And so we pay for it. And she started a group, talking about social movements. They started a little nonprofit called the New AMA, Americans Mad and Angry. So there's something out there in the water. I see Diane shaking her head that we can tap into. I've seen it. I see it every week in my inbox. And that's what I love about this meeting that you've put together. Thank you, Vikas and Shannon. In fact, it's putting my life together with Diane and then Rita Redberg and the Consumers Union leaders, the patient safety. How many of you are from Consumers Union Safe Patient Project? You've done all some transformative work. And so I think we have a moment in time to do something. Social movements are meant to correct things that are not right, and where it begins is through public awareness and dialogue. And that's what this town hall is all about. So I'll stop there, but I'll leave you with this quote to center us on why we're all here and what really matters. I took the liberty of a Gandhi quote. He was writing about businesses and how they should revere their customers. And I just substituted healthcare because it fits so beautifully. And I don't think he'd mind. A patient is the most important person on our premises. He is not dependent on us. We are dependent on him. He is not an interruption in our work. He is the purpose of it. He is not an outsider in our business. He is part of it. We are not doing him a favor by serving him. He is doing us a favor by giving us the opportunity to serve him. Thank you very much. We have 2.5 minutes left if anybody wants to come to the mic. Brian, yes.
I want to congratulate you for having this session. My experience has been very similar. I'm doing work right now, and I mentioned this yesterday. I'm doing work right now in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, where average cost per employee is $23,000. That means that for a family, that's a blended rate. So for a family, the combination of the employer contribution, the employee contribution, and the out-of-pocket is running somewhere around 32. Two statistics, one from RAND 2011, over the decade leading up to 2009, 79% of all of the growth in household income, not household income, but the growth in household income, was all absorbed by healthcare. That means that only 21% is available for, the stuff that doesn't matter, like roads and infrastructure and education and everything else. And looking at it a different way, if a company is competing on the international stage, they have to overcome a 9.5-point healthcare disadvantage just to be on a level playing field with their competitors in Australia or Germany or Korea. In my opinion, it's very important to have awareness of the society at large, but individuals are very easy to sway, and they've been very hard to mobilize. And so I've come to the conclusion that really the best strategy is to go to the purchasers and do a very, very good job of trying to mobilize non-healthcare business. There is only one group in America that is more powerful and more influential than the healthcare industry, and that is everybody who's not in the healthcare industry.
Right. There you have it. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll just add another quick factoid. In Kentucky, all the increase in education spending in the past 20 years, except for 3%, has gone to health care and things for employees and retirees. Only 3% of the increase in spending has gone for the education of children in the past 20 years. Okay, we've got to cut off. We have 16 seconds left. I'm sorry, but maybe during the town hall meeting we can continue. Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Dan, for coming from China Main.
Thank you, Rosemary.
The participants in the simulated town hall forum to come and sit up here. They pulled me.
Oops. Oh, just leave them where they are. Yeah. Oh, these chairs? Bill, what do you want?
Yeah,
You want this to go?
yeah.
Okay. I should ask, I don't know, is Vikas or Shannon going to give us any intro?
I don't know.
I'll ask. Are you giving us any? Okay.
Oh, you look so good. What a good-looking group.
Oh, should we just start? Okay, we're not gonna be shy here. So we're gonna introduce ourselves. I'm Marge Ginsberg with the Center for Healthcare Decisions. And I'm joined by Bill Dougherty from the University of Minnesota. And of course, you can read our bios and everything else in the speaker information, so we won't go into that. So we've had a lot of introductory comments in the course of today about public engagement and why that's important and why it's so critical. I want to pull just one snippet from what the rabbi said this morning. This is not verbatim, but basically the community has both the right and responsibility to allocate its resources responsibly. And if you're serious about looking at the term community to mean not only patients but also the public in general, then it's time we need some structure and format about how we actually make that happen. Before I give a brief introduction and then really turn it over to Bill to lead the mock town hall meeting, I do want to give you a heads up on late-breaking news. AHRQ, the Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality, about 3 days ago, just issued a new funding opportunities announcement. Nothing new, we see them all the time. But what makes this one particularly unique is that it's focusing on public deliberation as a method to provide input to change in healthcare policy and practice. And the opening statement of it is from a recent IOM report that says citizens, each one a past, current, or future patient, should represent both the healthcare system's unwavering focus and its fully engaged agents for change. The only other thing I want to read from this announcement, and literally I just read it on the plane, so I haven't fully digested it, but what makes it particularly unique in the area of public engagement around healthcare policy is it has some rather interesting expectations for what these rather small, not major funding, projects are going to do. They say at the end, the relevant impact on a decision, that is, changes in a policy or program, should be anticipated in the near term, within approximately 1 year following the conclusion of the deliberative study. That is, the impact should be clearly practical and not simply theoretical. And I think a lot of the discussion we've had over the past 2 days has been, how do we move from the simply theoretical to the actually practical? And I hope all of you will rush to get your applications in for doing a public engagement, particularly a deliberative methodology, which is one type of public input, and see if we can actually start translating the public voice, the citizen voice, into substantive change in policy or practice. Having said that, Bill is I'm going to turn it over to him just 1 second. So this is going to be an example of one way, a town hall meeting, to begin the discussion of incorporating the public voice into healthcare changes. You all are not going to just sit there doing nothing. We actually want you to be observing what's going on. Think about it. There's going to be an opportunity for you also to deliberate among yourselves. And when the stimulation is done, we're actually going to ask for your thoughts about what you saw up here, whether this kind of methodology is a good one to do, what you would do differently, what you see as the pros and cons. I'll repeat all this later before I ask you. But again, keep in mind, observe this as if, in fact, you are critics in your community and deciding, is this what we should do to start the discussion about the productive use of our healthcare resources? Bill.
All right, so good afternoon. I see 2 people sleeping already, so it's not our fault, right? It is not our fault if you were already asleep. But this is siesta time, so we're going to have a good time. Can we, first of all, thank our volunteer simulators here? Okay. And you notice how I got everyone to sign up? I passed it around so everybody saw the sign-up sheet and had to decide yes or no. So you all decided yes, which we really appreciate. So I direct the citizen healthcare program at the University of Minnesota, and what we do is community engagement. A lot of what we do is bring groups together to deliberate and take action. This is going to be a group that is here really to have a conversation, an initial conversation about the issue of overuse. The goals here, there are 2 goals for our time. One is that the conference participants get a taste of what a community dialogue gathering might look like, and maybe you're motivated to try something at home. As Marge indicated, this is just one model. We're going to use a particular approach I've used around certain controversial issues. I've actually led dialogues around gay marriage where people did not shoot each other. Okay, so this is one that's designed around some controversial issues. And for the town hall planning group that's meeting tomorrow, for us to learn from this as well. So there are 3 design principles in the development of this. And what I'm encouraging you to do as we go through, as Marge said, don't pay so much attention to the content of what everybody says, because in some ways nothing will be new, okay? But to the process. So the design principles to include diverse perspectives, which is crucial. Otherwise, you get a pep rally. But if you really want to get change in a community, there has to be a place for diverse perspectives. And as I said yesterday, for our purposes, what we've done is assigned roles. Okay, so everybody here picked a number, and they had a brief description of the role. To give you an example, we have some activist citizens. We have some non-provider professionals and payers, a hospital administrator, a small business owner, health plan manager. We have some physicians and nurses, including some proceduralists and some primary care and a public health nurse. We've got advocates. We have somebody who's a breast cancer advocate with a mental health advocate. And we have some other interested citizens. So we deliberately kind of forced a diversity of opinion here. The second design principle is we wanted enough time to demonstrate part of the process. The part of the process we're going to be demonstrating is the surfacing of people's priorities around this area, how important they think it is, if they think overuse is a problem, why they think it is. We're not going to do much with solutions on this. So this is enough for like a 45-minute demo to address issues, but we won't have time to get into solutions. Extent of the problem, if people think it is, and roots of the problem. So with that said, and at one point when I address a question to this group, I'm going to ask you, so that you don't spend 5 minutes just staring at them, I'm going to ask you to pair up and discuss the same question. So with that in mind, from now on, we're in the simulation, okay? And I'm going to be giving directions to the group, and you can listen in as I give the directions. So folks, welcome everyone. This is a group of Minnesotans here, so it's been snowing, and I'm particularly thrilled that you came out this evening. And we're here to discuss an issue that is growing in the popular professional conversation in the United States. And the name we're giving it for tonight is overuse of healthcare. And so let me just give a definition of it for our purposes tonight. And you're going to be free to either think this is a big problem or not a big problem, but at least we'll have a definition for our purposes this evening. Overuse means overdiagnosis, overtreatment, and the use of ineffective, unnecessary, and unwanted medical tests and treatments, okay? So it means overdiagnosis, overtreatment, use of ineffective, unnecessary, unwanted medical tests and treatments. As I said, we're going to make room for diversity of opinions tonight about whether you think this is a big problem, should be high priority, whether you think this is overblown, and in fact, if we focus on it too much, we're going to be neglecting other things. So that's the setup. And so what I'd like to do now is just to have, and there's some microphones on each row, and so when somebody wants to say something, just put up your hand and pass the mic down as quickly as we can, okay? So what I'd like to do is just start to have a few of you introduce yourself, give us your name, and then what role you're in here. You're at this meeting, a concerned citizen, healthcare professional, just something about your role. And then the third thing is just a couple sentences about why you chose to come out tonight for this conversation. So who would like to introduce yourself and say why you're here? Okay. Yeah, so just for purposes of the mic, they will be, when they see you speak, they will go, they will turn it on. But there may be a slight delay, so just start talking.
Got it. I'm Bart. I'm a citizen, and I'm fairly activated against the use of pharmaceuticals.
Okay, great. Terrific. Okay, yes.
I'm Hani Al-Khoury. I'm an internist at the VA. I have been interested in the overuse for the last few years, and I came here to understand what's in the culture where, in a system like the VA, where we do not have any financial incentive and we do not have any virtual malpractice risk, we have the most of the overuse as similar to the private sector.
Okay, great. Somebody else, why you're here, and maybe from a different perspective, a different reason. Yes.
Sure. My name is Alan. I'm a citizen, and I lost my mom about 20 years ago to breast cancer. She wouldn't get health care. She had a mammogram would have saved her life, and now everyone's talking about mammograms being unnecessary, and that really concerns me.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, somebody else, yes.
My name is Murray, and I'm a primary care physician, and I'm here because I think that the system encourages overuse of expensive tests. There's an old joke that says buried deep in the right lower quadrant of every human being is an $800 bill that can be reached only with a colonoscope. And I firmly believe that too many $800 bills have been biopsied by procedures of all kinds. I also
So
think
that's good for now. You'll have a chance later. That's why you're here. Great. Okay. So somebody else maybe from a different part of the community? Yes, sir.
I'm Kanu Patel. I'm an internist, but I'm here as a citizen. I personally feel that the overuse of healthcare is taking away resources for all other what our society needs for any other.
Okay, great. And so somebody else who's not, let's say, non-medical person here. Yes.
Well, I am a medical person. I'm Michael. I'm a
Well, I
cardiac
just
surgeon.
said non-medical person.
But
Okay.
I'm here because I'm sick of specialists being a punching bag.
Okay.
So it's kind of, we're the last people in the world you can pick on without being politically incorrect.
Okay.
So I'm
And
here,
so
I'm
you're
here to protect our interests.
So, yeah, so you're concerned about this overuse discussion, and that's why you're here. It could lead to bad outcomes. Okay, great. I'm glad you pushed past my resistance
So,
there.
and I'm
Yeah.
Jim from a community mental health center, and I'm kind of on both sides of this because
Okay.
I'm worried about the chronic, disgraceful underfunding of community mental health centers,
Yeah.
but I'm concerned about the overprescription of pharmaceutical drugs
Okay.
and overdiagnosis of mental health conditions.
Okay, okay.
I
Great.
work for a company. I'm the
what's your name?
benefits manager, Leonore.
Okay.
They've hired women now, so. And there's just, I mean, the employees of my company, the sky's the limit as far as they're concerned. And I've seen this grow year after year.
You've seen overuse grow?
Absolutely,
Okay,
and it's
okay.
just driving
Okay,
costs
and
through the
that's-
ceiling.
That's why you're here. So just one or two others who wanted to just, yes.
I'm Kate, and I'm a hospital administrator and at the local, and I'm a little worried about this discussion and the way things are trending. And so I wanted to hear what people were saying.
Okay, okay. It concerns you. So, I'm going to hear from three more people who had their hands up. Yes, go.
I'm Eric. I'm self-employed. I'm a citizen, and I'm just interested in the taxes I'm paying and where it's going, and I'm concerned about what I'm hearing.
Okay, so you're alarmed already just being here tonight. Okay, yes.
Hello, I'm Ian. I'm a state Medicaid director, and I'm very concerned about the lack of resources. Resources that are being taken away from underserved populations.
Okay, great. So one more? Yes.
I'm calling myself Trevor. I'm a seventh grade history teacher, and I'm here because I recognize the problems that healthcare is facing, but I'm particularly concerned about the implications of spending so much money on healthcare when education is suffering.
Okay, great. So it sounds like people are here with lots of different reasons, lots of different agendas, and some passion, some curiosity. So I think we're in for a good conversation tonight. So let me just give you the overview of where we're going to go. I'm going to, in a minute, I'm going to ask you to think of how big a priority problem you think overuse is, remembering how I defined it. And you may think it's a big problem. I heard that in some of your intros. And in that case, you're going to, or you think it's a small problem. So we're going to do priorities first. And then I'm going to ask you to reflect on your position on this. If you think it's a big problem, why? If you don't, why not? And then I'm going to ask you to form small groups of people who share your perspective on whether this is a big priority, a medium-sized priority, or a low priority. And if you're low priority, presumably you think it's if we address it too strongly, we're going to hurt other things. So we're going to have you form small groups. Now, what we're going to do for that, and I'll remind you in a minute, is given our space considerations here, we're not going to try to move chairs, but I'm going to have you actually go to different parts of this platform and stand for 5 or so minutes, okay? And if somebody can't stand, if somebody has some inability to stand, we can certainly get a chair, and that's fine as well. And then I'm going to pull out from the groups some of the highlights of what you've talked about. Okay, so what we're going to do is be airing a whole wide range of opinions about this, quote, problem, which some of you may think is a big problem, and some of you may not think is a problem at all. Okay, so we're going to pull those out, and we're going to try to understand these different perspectives on it. And then, so that's where we're going, and then a final question. So that's where we're heading. So now I'm going to begin with this question. How big a problem is overuse of healthcare, in your opinion? Based on what you think right now, and I realize some of you may have come just because you're sort of interested in healthcare, you might not have a strong opinion, that's fine. But based on what you think now, if you were to put a number between 1 and 10 behind the magnitude of this problem, okay, how big a priority is for us to understand and take action on overuse of medical care? 1 to 10, and this, so if you're on the lower end of that, you're thinking this isn't such a big problem. In fact, working on it might, have side effects on our community. country. If you are on the towards 10, you think this is really big and urgent, and we got to get moving on this. And if you are in the middle, you think it's a problem. There may be other problems you think are bigger. You think maybe this one we should work on, but you think there are other ones as well. And so it's important to you, but it's not like emergency. We have to do something perhaps right now in terms of other priorities. Okay, so you get that? So I'm asking you to think about 1 to 10, where you are, and then I'm going to just now, does everybody have a number in their head? Okay, so I'm going to ask for a show of hands. So how many of you would put it in the 1 to 4 low priority category? Would you raise your hand? Okay. How many of you would put it into the 5 to 7? Okay, you all bunched up over there. It's interesting. You didn't know that coming in, did you? Okay. And then how many of you would put it 8 to 10? Okay. Okay. So here's what, and then any abstentions? Some people, okay. Yeah. So any other abstentions? So abstentions, raise your hand high. Okay. It's really okay if you're not sure, what you think of it. That's great. And I may ask you at the end of all this, what you're thinking at that point. So here is then, with that in mind, here is the question that you're going to be discussing in whole groups and we're going to pull out. Why did you give the number you gave? Why did you rate the magnitude where you rated it? Okay? What was your thinking behind that? So if you gave it the low rating, then talk about why you think it maybe isn't that big a problem, or perhaps why if we work on it too hard now, we're going to cause other problems, if that's your view. If you are in the middle or the upper, then presumably you think this is a problem, and then I'm asking you to think about what are its roots. Why is this a problem? Okay? We're not getting into solutions in this part of the conversation. But if you said it was moderate to severe as a problem, presumably you have some reasons why you think it is and what's going on that's leading to it. Does everybody get the questions? Okay. And I'm asking you all to think about those questions as well. And so what I'm going to ask you to do is just to take a moment of silent reflection. So go inside. If you want to take a note or two, you can, for why you gave the number you did. And if you think it's a moderate to serious problem in terms of priority, why that and what are its roots? So take a moment of individual reflection, and then I'm going to have you form groups. So a moment of silence now. Okay, when I say, when I give the word go, what you're going to do is if you are in the low priority group, scores 1 to 4, then I'd like you to just come over and stand here. If you are in the medium priority group, here. If you're in the high priority group, over here. And then we're going to see how many you are. So I don't want groups over 5, okay? So if there's 9 of you over here, then divide into groups of 3 or 4, so that because we just have 5 to 7 minutes for the conversation. So low priority, medium priority, high priority, go. And I suggest, now, if you're willing to do this, so you don't just stare at them, I'd like to suggest you pair up with somebody to talk about where you are on this, why you think this is a problem. You wanting to do that, to just play along here? We have about 5 to 7 minutes. Okay, so divide into 2 groups. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so, okay. I think you all should divide into 3 groups. Yeah, divide into 3 groups. So somebody, couple people over here. 3 groups, no, 3 groups. 3, not 2 groups, 3 groups. 3 groups so you have more time. Okay, divide into 3 groups so you have more time to talk. Yeah, divide into 3, more people joined you. Okay, 3 groups. Okay. Are you a low priority group? Good, good. I'm going to be pulling those over here, so this creates some problems for your camera.
Can I move here and then the easels are maybe a little further back? Or?
I want them to be able to see me.
Okay.
They have to see me
need to
from
see
there.
the easel.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So what
So
if
you might want to pull over here.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll just work around you.
Yeah, okay, thanks. I wanted to give you a heads up on
because
it.
I have 2 other cameras up top.
Great, great. Excuse me.
Where did you want them?
I'm over here. I'm going to actually, I'm going to move this group in and then put them there. I want to move you that way so I can put up an easel here. Thank you. Great, thank you. Could I?
Did you need these both to be
Yeah,
sticky back?
they're going to. I think this one is sticky, so this is good.
Okay, I can get another one. I didn't realize when I
Yeah,
put them up that they're
yeah.
not both.
Yeah,
Do
good.
You want me to get
Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah. Okay. Good. Could you do me a favor and get me some more water? Thank you. Yeah, it's a good start. Yeah. Thank you. You didn't know you'd be literally carrying my water.
I'm always happy to hear water.
Yeah, give them a 1 minute. Yeah. 1 more minute. 1 more minute. Okay, time to go back. Head on back, folks. Yeah, what I'd like you all to do is to sit together, cluster together. So I'd like you all, when you go back, cluster together. When you go back, sit next to each other, okay? So try to cluster together when you go back. Head on back and see if you can sit near each other, if you can. Okay, ready to go. This is going to be blocking you, so you might want to sit up a little bit. Yeah. Ding, 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 ding. All right. All right. So, yeah, if it's possible to sit with your group, that's fine. But we're in such big rows here that's not necessary. But if you can, that would be great. So now we're going to pull some ideas from the groups. We're not going to have time to hear every idea. And I didn't ask for somebody to report out from the groups. The groups are really a chance to get your thinking stimulated. And I'm encouraging everybody to speak for something you believe, and it could be something that perhaps others in your group expressed as well. And as we go through this, to be listening both for opinions and views that are similar to yours, and also for those that are different, to see what we can learn from one another. Okay? And so what I'd like to do is to start with the lower priority group, the folks who did this scored a 1 to 4, and who would like to start. And each time you speak up 1 point at a time, okay, rather than 3 or 4, because that gives other people a chance to get in. So what's 1 point then from the group who, if you gave a low priority score, why? Who'd like to start? Yeah.
I'm a housewife, and I wasn't sure where I stood, but in our discussion, I came to the thought that
you can sit down.
Oh,
Yeah.
maybe there's enough resources, but it's access. That like there's enough food in the world, but it's not getting around to the people who need it. That there's enough out there.
Okay.
But we need to allocate it appropriately.
Yeah, so there is enough, and there are enough resources, right? There are enough healthcare resources. It's really an allocation rather than a overuse. Okay, we're not overusing, but rather the issue is the allocation of resources that are not overused. Is that your point? Okay. So it's an allocation problem. Okay. Somebody else from the low priority group. Yes.
I'm a cardiac surgeon. I think there's a misunderstanding going on here.
Okay.
That technology changes. When we used to do a lot of bypass surgeries, people criticized us for doing too many. And now, unfortunately, we're not doing quite so many. And the cardiologists are doing a lot of stents, and people are criticizing them. It's just technology's changed. Some are up, some are down. And you folks who only look at one end of the curve aren't understanding technology and are just a little bit unbalanced in your understanding of medicine, frankly.
Okay. So you feel misunderstood.
And the technology changes.
Yeah. Yeah. So let me see if I get your point. That technologies come along, and then at some point, maybe they start to. It can appear that there's an overuse problem because they have reached a peak. Something else comes along, okay, and they go down.
That's right. So just let the natural physician judgment take its course, and really this problem will not seem so severe to you.
Okay, so your second point there, even though I just said one, your second point was physician judgment.
Well, that because this natural thing, when you're second guessing, that's much physician judgment. We had a citizen who was talking about not trusting data, and it's like if you step back and look at what we did a year later with a database, you'll go, this doctor should have done 5 more, and this doctor should have done 5 less, and that's really artificial.
Okay, so it's going to work out over time if we trust the technologies, we trust physician judgment. The curves are going to go like this.
Exactly.
Okay. Somebody else in that group.
I'm happy to comment. I'm actually a breast cancer screening expert.
Oh, yeah, okay, I missed you over there, yeah.
I think about this issue quite frequently.
Yeah.
I think the issue of overuse, frankly, has been overstated.
Okay.
It's, as we all know, the estimates are all over the map. It's
Okay.
it's nearly impossible to prove at the patient level.
Okay.
And the more that we talk about overuse and worrying our patients about this, the less likely they are to get screened.
Okay.
Anybody who's attentive to the literature will recognize that there's a very consistent 15 to 25% reduction in breast cancer mortality for those who undergo screening.
Okay.
And my view is that if we're discouraging people from getting screened, we're putting their lives at risk. And if we screen more people, then there's more lives saved.
So yeah, you really believe that we're under screening, right? I mean, that anything we do that keeps people from getting appropriate screening tests. And so if under the umbrella of let's prevent overuse, we end up with people being afraid to get mammographies and other sorts of screening tests, we're going to ultimately do damage.
Absolutely.
Okay. Anything else from the low priority group? Yes.
Yeah, I'm Dr. Cologne. I'm a gastroenterologist, and I have some of the same issues. I'm one of the few gastroenterologists in town here that will see Medicaid patients.
Okay.
And I'm overwhelmed with doing colonoscopies, which we know will save lives, prevent colon cancer among that population. And part of that reason is because some of my colleagues in private practice just feel that they can't afford to do that.
Okay.
So what we need is more resources to help us do something which we know will save lives. 2 weeks, every 3 months, I spend 2 weeks going down to Mississippi to the Delta, where there are 25,000 African Americans with no access to a gastroenterologist. And basically, I just do colonoscopies from the time I get there to the time I leave. And I think that's scandalous in this country, and that we have a problem of underutilization.
So the patients that you're working with at some financial cost to you, you feel have less access, so they're underutilizing a very valuable resource for their health, and that's unfair. So in the discussion about overuse, you're afraid your group is going to get even more under.
Exactly.
Okay. Anything else that came out of that group that, yes?
Hi, I'm Kendra, and like Michael, I'm a cardiac surgeon. And I think that the idea of overuse has been too popularized. I've been training for well over a decade. I'm considered an expert in my field, and I think that overuse is really a disservice to patients because they come in and they don't trust me. I have the training and the expertise to make accurate diagnoses, and the services that I recommend and advise to are the ones that they really need. And there may be a few bad apples in the system that make us all look bad. But look at that crazy mayor in Toronto. He's clearly been abusing the system, but it doesn't speak for all of us.
Okay, so you feel kind of smeared with with this big brush that there may be some of your colleagues who are overusing surgeries and procedures, and that patients come in the door having read about that, and this hurts your relationship with them.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
Before we move on, anything else that hasn't come out from the low priority group? Okay. So how about people in the middle priority group? So who would like to go? So could pass the. There we go.
Hi. I'm a wife that has a husband with a pre-existing condition. My son has a chronic disease, and my 85-year-old mother lives with us, and I work full-time. And the reason that I can't believe that there's over-treatment because I trust my doctor.
Okay.
I didn't go to medical school. I have to believe that they're doing the right thing for my husband, for my son, and for my mother.
Okay. Now you put yourself in the middle group though. So do you think there's an issue that?
No, I can't. I won't allow myself. I have to believe that the system.
Okay. So you're really in the 1 to 4 group.
No, it might not.
Okay. Give her the mic. Give her the mic. Give her the mic.
Okay. You know what? I don't know.
You don't know.
I don't know.
Okay, got it.
So I'm going to.
You're going in the middle.
I'm going in the middle because maybe I hear all these things.
Right.
And I do see that they're all going to the doctor an awful lot. And there seems to be a lot of medication on our bathroom. But but what do I know?
Right. Okay. So you've been hearing enough about this overuse thing to worry you, but you trust your doctor. and you're worried that some of that broader stuff may interfere with the care. You got a lot of people who need a lot of doctoring, it feels like. Yes. Okay. Somebody else, yes.
So I'm from a community mental health center, and so I'm a Libra. I'm always kind of in the middle. So on the one hand, we clearly have overtreatment with kind of disease mongering in the.
And what do you mean by disease mongering?
By creating disease, mental health diagnoses that are pretty questionable.
Okay.
And are assigned, and drug companies invent drugs that, and then they have to invent diseases for which they're going to be used for.
Okay.
So I think that's a huge.
And you have a problem with that?
I have a big problem with that. So I put that over on the 10 side.
Right. Okay.
But then on the other side is the chronic under-treatment and under access for mental health patients, particularly in minority communities.
Yeah.
So that kind of balances out to a medium score.
Yeah. So this, So you agonize about two things then.
Yes.
Right. One is the under access, the under treatment of people, low-income people, minority people that you work with.
Yeah, and I worry that if we cut off funds for mental health, it won't come from the poor that lack access. It'll just be more money for the drug companies.
Say that again. That if we cut off money from.
So what I'm saying is, the concern is that if
Right.
we say that we're over-treating
Right.
and we take money out, it won't come from where there's waste. It'll come from where there's want.
Right. So there's waste in the system, but you're not seeing it where you are, and that's where that's the group who don't have lobbyists, and they may lose out. Okay, great. Okay, somebody else in the middle group in the second row. Yeah, he's got one.
Hi, I'm just a citizen, and I like my doctor. She's always
So
done
can I stop you? Don't say just. Say I am a citizen.
I'm a citizen.
All right.
A proud citizen.
Good.
And I like my doctor. She always does the right thing for me and takes good care of me. And I'm just worried that any solutions to this problem are going to come between the decisions me and my doctor make together.
Yeah. You are concerned about it, though?
Yeah, I mean, I read the papers. It seems like there's a problem.
Okay.
Fairview is always putting up new buildings, and
yeah.
you know,
Okay.
I see all the MD license plates on the BMWs.
I take it you're not an auto dealer, or you would see that as a plus. But it's the kind of unintended effects. I mean, so let's stay with me. Yeah, so you're concerned. So you read about this. You're concerned about the new wings in the hospitals. But say you're concerned again.
Right. I'm just concerned that any solution to the problem is going to get between me and my doctor.
Okay.
And I don't want a government bureaucrat, in the doctor's room with me telling me what my doctor can and can't do for me.
Okay. So you're concerned that the solutions may come from the government.
Right, or the government, or some other
Or
bureaucrats.
somebody else impersonal out there.
Right.
And it's
Somebody
going to
out there.
interfere between you and your doctor,
Right.
although you do see a problem out there.
Right.
Got it. Okay. Somebody else in the middle group. Yes.
I manage a health plan, and I think there might be some fat in the system, but we run our health plan very effectively and efficiently. And one of my concerns is if this happens, that my organization will be put in a straitjacket and will be unable to continue the quality that we've offered.
Okay. So you do see a challenge to our healthcare system about overuse?
I do, not with my health plan.
But not with your particular
Right.
plan. Okay. Because you guys you feel you've been working at this.
Well, we follow very carefully. We looked at the IOM report. We follow the regulations. We make sure that we provide care according to the recommendations. We look at ARC. And so I would say
Right.
that we actually do a very good job.
Okay. And that you could get swept up in something.
Very concerned about
that if everybody gets cut, 15% or something like that, you're into the bone and the muscle, and the others just get rid of the fat.
I am very concerned about that.
Okay. Somebody else in the middle group. Yes.
Well, I'm a college professor. I'm just here as a citizen, but I have read enough stories about, and I'm sure your health insurance group is very good, but I've read enough stories about managed care organizations denying people some treatment that they thought was too expensive or not effective enough or whatever. And I'm kind of like the gentleman over there. I want to make the decision between me and my doctor.
Okay.
I don't want some health insurance company telling me what is and isn't good for me.
Okay. So what do you read that concerns you? So, about overuse. So let me just get that part as well.
The concern about
Yeah.
overuse? Well, you do read about the overuse of PSA testing, and then there was the big thing about the U.S. Preventive Services Task Force and mammograms, and
Okay.
so you don't know whether you ought to be doing it or you shouldn't be doing
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Drugs, we do all those stupid drug ads every night when you're trying to watch TV.
There's some beautiful people in those.
Oh, yeah. But, it's really embarrassing to be watching the Viagra ads with your teenage son.
Yeah,
So I'm
yeah.
sorry. That's just not fun.
Yeah.
So anyway,
So
so I know there's some problem, but I
Right.
just don't want the insurance companies to be making that decision for me.
You don't trust those because you've also heard about denial of care,
Yeah.
of necessary.
You read, used to be, you'd read all the time about some poor person who, died because their insurance company
Right.
said they couldn't get some experimental treatment
Okay.
or whatever.
Okay, so the group in the middle articulated both sides of this concern that you're directly seeing or indirectly, but also concerns about interference, particularly with the doctor-patient relationship, cuts to systems that are doing a good job now. So raising those issues. Okay, so let's move on to the group who see this as a high priority and quite urgent. Who would like to start? So let's pass. There should be. There we go. Pass one to the second row so they're spread out.
Like my neighbor here. I'm a concerned citizen.
Yep, good.
And I think the problem is that people just don't take care of themselves. They let themselves get fat, overweight, and then they end up in the emergency room, and then they're just taken advantage of by doctors and by these rich insurance company executives. And the real problem is people just not taking care of themselves.
So overuse is a problem, a serious problem, but it's mostly the individuals who don't take care of ourselves, and then we need all of that.
Yep.
Okay. But you also mentioned insurance companies. It didn't sound like you sounded too positive there. I don't know.
That's correct.
So what's your concern there? So you're not just saying it's individuals.
The doctors and the insurance companies are in cahoots, so they're both making money for each other.
You think everybody's at fault here? Yeah, I mean both individuals, right?
Right.
Yeah. So individuals, we're not taking adequate care of ourselves. We turn ourselves over to doctors and insurance companies, and they take advantage.
Exactly.
All right. That's serious. Okay. Somebody else on this one.
Okay. So, is this on yet?
Yep.
So I went in to see my doctor. I have this pain up under my ribs, and they do these studies and thought it was my gallbladder, and they said my gallbladder looks fine, but they see this spot on my liver, and they don't know what it is. And I go home that night, and I can't stop thinking about the spot on my liver, so I made another appointment, and I go in, and they said, well, the only thing we can do is biopsy it to tell you. All right, I do the biopsy, I come home from the procedure, and I pass out and knock my head on the step.
Oh, boy.
My husband calls the ambulance. I go in, I need a transfusion because I'm bleeding from the biopsy, and then I get the bill. So I keep reading about waste in the system, and I think we should turn the word into profit. It's not waste, it's waste for me, it's profit for somebody else.
And you're pretty mad about it.
I am mad.
Yeah. And you've experienced it personally. Yeah. Okay. So it's not waste, that's not the main thing, it's the profit. Okay. Are you doing okay?
I'll live, except for the risk of hepatitis and CMV and
Ooh, okay. Well, I appreciate you sharing an actual story. So, because this is real. I mean, healthcare is real to us personally. It isn't just sitting around up here with actuarials and numbers. So, somebody else. Good, pass that down.
I'm really concerned about antidepressants. I mean, it seems like everybody in my neighborhood is on them for one reason or another.
Yeah.
My neighbor's kid straight out of college, it seems like leading a decent life, new job, new boyfriend, new house, but she's freaked out over the commute every day, and she's fishing around to see, to deal with this anxiety, and she's being prescribed Zoloft. And another neighbor's, dad just died, and this new DSM, coding that is trying to claim that grief and bereavement is a medical condition. And
so just for people to know, that's the diagnostic manual of the American Psychiatric Association. And there's been all this controversy about grief, normal grief, and turning it into a diagnosis.
Yeah,
That's what you're
the
referring to.
Zoloft is like Pez machines, and I don't even know why Colorado, where I live, legalized marijuana. There's Zoloft on every corner.
So So you're seeing, in the mental health area, you're seeing way overuse from your point of view.
From my street corner, yeah.
So ordinary life stresses becoming a medical
Yes,
problem that the
yes.
medical system has a response to that costs a lot of money and.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. In the back, yes, sir.
So as a public health nurse, I would certainly, I think, agree with what was said earlier that, breast cancer screening is important and colonoscopies to a certain extent are important. But I think that one of the reasons we spend so little on preventive measures and public health is that all of that money is being sapped up by medical care in terms of overuse of unnecessary procedures and unnecessary tests. I mean, 3/4 of our spending goes to chronic conditions, and yet we're spending less than 10% of our money on preventive care and public health. So I think that if you really want to save costs and save people a lot of suffering, it's obvious where the money should be spent, and it's in public health.
Okay, so you're acknowledging the concerns of some of your fellow citizens here about the risk of underuse or of resources not being there for particularly low-income people who need them. But you're saying that you think one of the reasons why that's a threat now and in the future is the overuse.
Certainly. I think both problems are tied together.
Okay, over and under are tied together. Okay, yes. Let's pass that around.
As a primary care physician, I'd like to echo that statement in that when medical students are graduating from medical school now, and so many of them are in debt.
Put close to your mouth, yeah.
Sorry about that. And they can't go into primary care specialties to pay off their debt. They just aren't going to make enough money. So the maldistribution of payments for procedures and for specialized testing is affecting the distribution of physicians in this country. And we have to do away with that maldistribution so that we can compensate people in a fashion that enables them to go into primary care specialties.
Okay. Which, just for those of you who may not be aware, you're saying that the primary care specialties tend to do fewer procedures that are so heavily reimbursed.
People are not compensated for cognitive skills.
Cognitive skills are?
Thinking.
Thinking.
And looking and using one's hands to examine. Whereas the skills that are used for technical skills, like making an incision or using a colonoscope or using a cardiac catheter, are really very much overcompensated. And there's a maldistribution of payment.
And then you're saying that
I want to
people
correct
going
the
in,
maldistribution.
of both payment and also of providers, because people will, you're saying, will go into the better compensated areas.
Well, they can't afford to go into the less compensated ones.
Right, with all the debt they have. Okay. Somebody else, yes.
Hi, so I'm the state Medicaid director.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty concerned about overuse, particularly because we're only seeing potentially 2/3 of the people. 2/3 of the people are actually getting care that could actually receive care, especially in this affects underserved communities very much. So I would like to see more efficiency within the actual medical community, so that we could actually have more people that are particularly underserved accessing these resources.
So if you heard a physician speak a gastroenterologist who said that he's working for low income for himself with a group who is underserved in terms of diagnostic testing. And so that makes him very concerned about this big emphasis on overuse. How would you respond to that concern?
Well, I think on some level we need to do the comparative testing to see whether or not it is actually effective, what's actually being done within the system.
Okay.
And I think, I think from there we look at what's effective and whether or not we're spending money in the right places. And I think within that system, Medicare and Medicaid, all these Great Society programs actually work, comparing what was actually before it. So I think we need to actually find some sort of solvency in these programs.
Okay, and that you don't see where you want to go with overuse as a threat to the low-income population. You see it as the reverse. For you, it's going to help them.
Right.
Okay. So, so no break and roll. Yes.
So, I was hearing what some of these people said about not wanting the government or companies to get in between them and their doctor. And I can see how people would feel that way, but I'm a benefits officer for a company, and I see the requests that are made by the workers in my company for these endless tests, and they seem to get all their information from magazines and television. And I'm thinking maybe the doctors get their information from magazines and television too. But it just seems to me that the number of tests, the number of screenings, the number of prescriptions is completely out of whack. And I feel like somebody has to be the grown-up in the room. And I can understand that it doesn't feel right to think about somebody getting in between you and your doctor, but maybe there's a way to understand that there's a lot of misinformation out there.
Okay, so let me, you also responded to one of those other concerns. So I'm interested in, we just have a few minutes left for this part. A big concern, I heard some of those who think this is a big problem, I heard some of you address the concern about underuse as a side effect or of emphasizing overuse, that is increasing underuse. And then you just started to respond to a concern of some of your fellow citizens about getting in between the doctor and the patient. So I'm interested in just a couple minutes before we wrap up, if somebody in the high priority group has an additional comment about this very serious concern that of creating a lot of static between doctors and patients. You and then you, yeah.
I'm a citizen, and I personally feel that whenever my patient ends up to any specialist or specialty care, they keep on calling and they're referring back to some other specialist, keep them busy running around to tertiary care hospitals and consuming the bill and no control, taking away time away from the work time, the family time, and costing too much for the ancillaries, medications, and even parking.
So I hear that, and could you tie that into, if you would, so you're a physician, I'm sorry, you're a citizen, that's right. So you're concerned about people having so many doctors, how the heck are they going to have a good relationship with that? You're just running around all the time.
Right.
Okay. And then could somebody particularly address the concern in addition? So two people have, I'm interested in somebody else in the high priority group addressing the concern about what this is going to do to doctor-patient relationships. Did you have something on that or something different? Did you want to respond to that?
As a primary care, I think we became slaves, not only to the insurance company, but also to the papers and now to the computer, where we lost our dignity and we lost touch with patient. And this is one of the symptoms why we have the overuse system at the current time.
Okay, the slavery. Okay, so the slavery to computers and these systems. Okay, and so do you want to get in then, Bill?
Yeah, Bill, I might have a little bit different perspective.
Okay.
You know, when you asked what we'd put on as a priority, 10 came into my mind, and after listening to some of these discussions, I'd put it all the way down to an 8.
Okay.
So I think there's still a problem. You know, you can't pick up a magazine or a newspaper or turn on the radio or TV without hearing about some of these issues. I know it's going to be hard for everybody to believe, but I'm a baby boomer. I know I don't look that old, but I am.
Well, they started at 49.
Well,
so,
then I'm a baby boomer.
Okay.
In fact, I'm with a group called the Baby Boomers for Balanced Health Care. And what we've been focusing on is the ever-escalating amount that we spend on health care in this country. And what we're trying to address is the cultural belief that as baby boomers we've certainly embraced that more health care is better health care. And from everything you hear and read and pick up and listen to these days, we've come to realize that more health care may not be better health care. In fact, it may be harmful health care. And the other thing that we're concerned about is what kind of legacy we're going to leave to the future generation if we continue spending all of the money on ourselves, what our grandchildren are going to have left over.
Okay, great. Well, so we are going to wrap this up with some gratitude towards our group for their roles here. And then Marge is going to lead us in a conversation.
And we're going to have you all stay there. And now it's going to be your turn to respond. So we are interested in hearing from various folks if they want to come to the mic. But let me tell you what your assignment is. You can answer any one or all three of these. The first is if you have any particular questions about the process of a town hall meeting, not the content, not how well they played their roles, they did a fabulous job, but rather what the whole concept of a town hall meeting as a one strategy for beginning to initiate a community dialogue. So if you have questions about the process, we're going to turn it right over to Bill. The second one is your reflections on this process itself, whether you think this is or is not a good process to use in order to establish a dialogue in your community. And the third is a little more specific, is whether you actually want to identify any of the pros or cons of starting discussion with the town hall meeting approach. Town hall meetings are one of about 10 different methods for getting public input. It's a popular method. It's often used to initiate discussions, but it's not the only one. But because it's the only one we're doing here today, we do want to start with that and hear your thoughts about pros and cons. So we'll go ahead and start with our first.
This is for Bill, really. It's a methodological question. There's a presumption of equal information, perhaps, maybe not. I'm curious whether or not such a process really would require or should require some homework ahead of time and or an initial 10-minute presentation of just the facts, ma'am, if one could even get there. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I'm into a much more pure democratic model. When professionals come in and give the facts, there's always a spin. And so, and I understand that many town halls would be done that way. There would be a PowerPoint at the beginning, a handout. And one could easily do that just in terms of cost. I mean, those things are, where the costs have been, you could do that. But around whether there's overuse, there's apt to be a lot of difference of opinion. And so my preference, and others do it differently, I'm assuming these citizens came out because they care about this issue. And I don't like to begin these with me as the expert delivering the information. So that's my own preference.
Okay. Tom?
I just wanted to say, and Marge, I didn't know if you were going to share it, but Marge was part of a group of people that just did a randomized controlled trial of a bunch of different deliberative approaches. And ARC just published the executive summary of that, so those findings are available for you online on the Effective Healthcare site. And I know we have a bunch of other resources on our site, so I appreciate you saying there are multiple ways of doing it. And I think one of the things I'd only add is that your community makeup will really determine the best approach, and it is important to do your homework in terms of thinking about which approach is best for your community.
Great. Good. Thanks, Tom.
Yeah, an apparent con of what we just saw here in the short time we had is the lack of development of the ideas. We heard a lot of sound bites getting between me and my doctor. It's, I trust my doctor, but no sort of working with that to say, now that I've heard other people's point of view, let me go back to my own point of view and reassess it or rethink it. So are we missing something, and what would have happened if it had gone on longer, or is there a different methodology?
I said at the beginning, we did this in 40 minutes. We would have had a break and then come back and done more. Yeah, so this was just a matter of showing a particular process here, but this would have been too short a meeting. And like a question on my mind, and I looked at the clock, was going to be, did anybody, like one person said his opinion changed a little bit. I was going to ask if anybody else was influenced. So that's where I was going to go next.
Great. Yes?
Yes. Well, on the pro side, if this is part of a political process, I think that there is the benefit that airing concerns can lead to buy-in for people, that in hearing each other, possibly they would become informed. And I think that on the con side is that you may be alarming people by hearing misinformation, that also concerns won't get addressed, but people will leave believing, things that have been said about screening or, other statements made. So another alternative as a process could be to recruit people in the community to come and share what their experience has been in making medical decisions, to reflect back on it, and also to avoid proselytizing, to test some evidence-based key messages that people could just respond to. I agree, disagree, that doesn't fit with my experience, but it might be a way to then come away with people being informed rather than alarmed.
Good, thank you.
One thing I'll say is that part of it is how much we trust democracy. And so there's, I'll make an editorial point. As somebody who does a lot of grassroots stuff, one of my impressions of the conferences were very professional-centric. And so I'm not attributing anything to the last person who spoke, but this fear that people will hear from each other and go wrong is, I think, is kind of often baked into a professional process where we're those experts. That's my opinion.
Can you tell us what your experience is as the result of this type of process? And do you have a feeling for where it leads? Because this is just the beginning.
Yeah, my own projects at home lead to action groups getting formed. Who's concerned? Among those top group or anybody who joined them, would you like to form an action group? But I tend to start with this deliberation in which I'm trying to model careful listening and reflecting back so that there's a place for everybody here in a non-demonizing approach. And then I say, who wants to do something about it? That's what I do personally.
So assuming you having all these stakeholders the same place, this discussion can get really tense, and I wonder, how can you deal with this, having patients and doctors in the same space talking about this issue,
So let's ask the group here, because you heard polarization, you heard very polarized views among each other. Were there some aspects of the process, knowing you were in a role, that worked against this kind of getting so heated up? Was there anything you saw in the process? Yes. We need yeah. Pass them down, folks, yeah.
It's very important for the facilitator to acknowledge each person's opinion equally, and I think that that's what you've done. I also do a lot of speaking in Connecticut, and what I find is if I acknowledge each person and give them a voice, and the group will also start to control, if you get someone that starts to be a little bit overzealous, you'll watch the dynamics of the group also start to control that person.
Okay. Okay. A guy behind you wanted to say something.
So more of a question is, you had us split up into groups based on kind of where we already were, and there's a lot of research in psychology that shows when you get like-minded people together, they push farther to one side. Is that something
yes,
that
deliberate.
you worry about?
It's for the 5 minutes so that they get some comfort, and then the rest of it is they experience themselves by the end of the day as having the diversity.
I think the town hall format is especially important now because people are getting a lot of their news in echo chambers, and we're not listening to the other side. When we read our media, we read it more selectively than we did 10 years ago. So I think bringing it back to the grassroots town meeting format forces you to listen to the other person's perspective.
I think let's go back to the next person.
Just a couple things. Carol Cronin with the Informed Patient Institute. First, it felt very real. I think the issues that you surfaced, I don't know how much you actually did prep, but it felt that you really did surface a lot of the issues that I think that people would have. Second, I was very impressed with your listening and reflecting back. A lot of times you said something and people said, yeah, you got it. So I think the role of the facilitator. And I guess I'm also very curious where this goes afterwards. I'm sorry we didn't get to see it. So besides action groups, what else, where else does this go as in terms of the that, you know, what do people walk away from these feeling or
Well,
thinking?
I don't want to dodge your question except to say we are having a public engagement work group meeting tomorrow morning, and we will actually talk more specifically of actual examples of how people have used public engagement methodologies, different methodologies, and what they've done with it, and more discussion, more in-depth discussion about what the objectives are and how do you answer the so what question. So I guess I am dodging it. Come tomorrow morning.
I'll add one thing.
Go ahead, Bill.
You did notice the last person was with the group that I'm part of, the Baby Boomers of Balanced Healthcare. He was a plant. And so we're going to be holding town forums in Minnesota, and it's going to end with, there's a group who are in the 8 to 10 category who are going to run with this around the cultural assumption, not demonizing anybody else, but who wants to go with that group in the future? That's an example of how you can follow up. How many people change their mind? What I find is people soften in terms of this notion that the other people are idiots. Okay, I had a same-sex marriage group in which a minister at the beginning said, I'm never going to change my mind being against it. Another woman said she was very afraid that she was going to lose assurance and other benefits for her child and her partner. And at the end, the minister said, I haven't changed my mind, but I wish you and your partner and your child nothing but the best. So that's some of the softening.
Yes, sir.
Hi, great job, everyone. My name's Jeff Hebner. I'm in Madison, Wisconsin, at Group Health Cooperative, and also on the board of National Physicians Alliance. I'm very interested to get this process started in Madison, and actually Sally Kraft, who's on the other side of the room, is at UW Health System, and we're working together. We've just started this process a tiny, tiny bit, centered around using Choosing Wisely and asking. We have a local grant through our Quality Collaborative, and we've asked the member organizations to start engaging their member or patient advisory boards in how they can interact with Choosing Wisely, the lists and those recommendations with the health professionals that they encounter. And we've just started to crack this a little bit, but the process has been very interesting just from the couple of sessions we've started, and we've learned a lot. I do think I'm very trusting of the democratic process too, and you provided a great definition of overuse for this room. But my concern would be without some more introduction of what the topic is and examples, especially examples, that without a well-informed group of people, it is going to be hard to have, I think, good discussion.
Sure.
It's an interesting discussion because I don't think there's any right or wrong way to do it. One can start with a brief educational overview so at least everyone's talking the same concepts and then go into the open discussion, or one can start with open discussion and then bring in some facts and see how people change. I think the key here is giving people the freedom to express their view and know that they're being heard. People will take in new information and different viewpoints, I think, my experience is, after they've had a chance to talk. You have to give them a chance to basically spill their gut. And then they start becoming more open to hearing things that they initially would have said, that's not true, because that's not my experience. But once they get their experience out, then they can start opening the door. So.
And the choosing, what we're going to be, did you want to add up?
My follow-up would be, I guess we should be thoughtful about how we're actually going to get people to this town meeting in the first place. And to me, it seems like we sort of do need some sort of respected panel of experts or something like that.
Well, okay, so this is the conversation we need to have.
Right.
I've gotten people to lots of, not on this topic, but on lots of topics. So there has to be something goes out on the web. You have to connect with an organization. You have to feed something in, absolutely. But starting with the panel, my opinion, deadly. At the end of the panel, and most panels, this conference is the exception, are deadly, dull. It's 4 separate PowerPoints. Thank you for not just drowning us with PowerPoints here. Although the ones that we used were fine. But the panel ends with a Q&A. So I can't say this too strongly. If you start with a panel of experts, the citizens are passive. And the only thing they can do when somebody's passive, they can either ask questions or they can oppose you. There's no agency in that, okay? So what I do is pose questions. I will often, around some topics, give some information. I'm not against that. Very objective information. But I pose questions to the group.
Yes.
Jill Zorn, Universal Healthcare Foundation of Connecticut. I was thinking, I'm anti-panel, so I'm with you on that. And our foundation has been thinking about trying to convene consumers, and they wouldn't be these consumers. And I'm quite concerned that overuse is too narrow of a way to attract people in the first place. So the topic, I think, is very important in how it's explained. Overuse, underuse, misuse, which is what you ended up talking about, maybe. And then I'm also wondering about where is cost floating around. Because if you just did a survey of regular people, they're more worried about cost than this, even though we know they're connected. And so what is the right topic to get people in the room in the first place?
Our topic with the baby boomers for balanced health care, I keep saying it, is overspending. We're bankrupting ourselves.
Overspending is different
Yeah, you asked me the question. So our public, the thing we're going for is overspending, and it hurts us. Okay, and that's how we hope to get people in the door.
That's good.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, sir.
So my name is Jatin Debe. I'm one of the local geriatrician. My concern and observation for a few of the town hall meetings is you at times get the most vocal, most extreme people who show up. How do you balance that, either after the town hall or through other means, to make sure you're getting the neutral and more representative of the community in general?
Well, I'm not looking for neutral people. I'm looking for some extremes. But let me ask the group, what process did you see me using that mitigates that? The way I set this up mitigated against it.
You treated every statement, just as she said, as of equal value, and it ended up on your paper.
Yeah.
And you did not make bad faces at anyone.
And I did, although it was hard at times.
I know, I appreciate
Yes.
You were saying, I believe he was asking how do you make sure that not just the students show up to the meetings, that's the wrong material.
Oh, to the meetings, yeah. Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
And what do you do afterwards to make sure
Yeah.
you get the full
So thank you. So you have to partner. What we do is partner with organizations who sponsor these, and they get some of their level heads out. I would never just put an ad in the paper.
The partnering with other organizations who can bring in the demographics that you're looking for is key.
AARP Minnesota, we're in conversations with them. They can get 100 people at a town hall anytime they want. Okay? Yeah. So.
Yes. Hi, I'm Kelly Slate-Vikavich, and I work for Maine Quality Counts. And first of all, I want to commend the organizers for bringing this to us, because I really feel from our viewpoint and what we're working with, it's really what's going to make the action possible for us to do the reforms we need to do. So thank you very much. Also, we put our toe in the water last year to do town hall meetings, and they seem a little scary, but let me tell you that stuff you get out of them is incredible. And the partnering with other organizations to us was key, such as with our area agencies on aging, creating that dialogue with other collaborators and other partners in this mission that we have is really extremely important. We also work with employers and bring them in as well. So the briefing paper and that type of thing, but really your partners are doing most of that marketing and work for you to bring in a diverse group. Also looking at current events. You saw Dan here today from China and the impact healthcare costs have on our municipalities. Looking at some of those issues as we move forward, looking at bringing in municipalities and their people who live in their communities will probably be another conversation we'll have in our communities. So it's kind of like once you get involved in the town hall mindset, you see the various opportunities and the various groups of people you can bring in. So thank you very much. It's been tremendous to see this today.
Great. Thank you. We have a question here from one of our...
Yeah, I actually had a couple of questions. The one is, how do you avoid having people walk away with the impression that perhaps this feels to them like a setup? Someone so I came in with sort of a, my character had significant uncertainty at the beginning and was leaning a little more toward, no, overuse isn't a big problem. And when you then toward the end of the conversation say we're going to organize the people who are in the 8 to 10 group and start doing something. To me, at that other end of the spectrum, it does start to feel a bit like there's something a little bit amiss. And then the other concern along with that is, what do you do about disinformation disinformation that is expressed? So if you have someone who is completely off base in what they cite as facts, how do you address that to make sure that that doesn't become sort of the message or tone of the evening?
If it's have a very high bar for disinformation, like nobody in the field would say that, then I'll correct it. But I was not going to get into the debate about mammographies. So it's about where your bar is.
But so he has a concern though, so even if you don't, it's not high enough for you to do it, how do you make it that, well, everybody here as well, it really is proven to save lives?
Did you notice somebody else responded to it?
Yeah.
And they're going to get that information out there everywhere. Okay, but if I'm the one that says, no, there's no evidence for that, and colonoscopies are way overused, then I'm really dividing.
I guess I'm thinking about the person who walks in and has the perspective. This whole thing is the whole healthcare issue is a government setup.
Yeah.
And then toward the end of your conversation, you then say, oh, and by the way, those of you who are in the 8 to 10 group, we're going to get you together to sort of have a discussion about how we can lead to
Well, you
action
notice it was
on
somebody in the group who said he's starting a movement.
Right.
And last point. It's a democracy, folks. And so if people who were on the 0 to 4 want to organize, go for it.
Yeah.
Okay? So in other words, if the whole process is entirely set up the way I did it, and then we say there are some citizens who care deeply about this and they're going to organize, okay.
Let me respond to Jerry's question. What happens when disinformation comes out? If it's disinformation based on a worldview, like this is a government setup, you don't have to do anything. The rest of the crowd knows that that's a worldview. It has nothing to do with facts. If they actually state a fact that is really wrong, like Bill, I have a bar. If it's really not such a horrible fact that it's going to really make everybody think differently, I leave it alone. If it is a fact that they have misstated pretty horrendously, and you don't ever want to lose the trust with them as a facilitator, I'd say, I've heard other people express it differently. You always put it on somebody else. So you can say, in other groups, I've heard some people say that, in fact, mammographies really don't help under the age of 50. I don't know, do other people have thoughts about that? So without becoming the bad guy and still respecting their perspective. So.
Nice.
I think we're there.
Alan Gorel, one of my previous positions was as president of the Massachusetts Medical Society, which brings me to the question of, can we do this with physicians as well? I found myself being very impressed with the reasonableness of all the positions brought out. The arguments were very powerful. And you, in fact, said you started at a 10 and now you were an 8. And I think a lot of, there's a need for dialogue among the physician community. Remember what Don said yesterday, Don Berwick, that he thought that one of the tasks that we have to have is a conversation within medicine, as well as these kinds of conversations in the community. And I'm wondering if you have tried this. Now, you're from Minnesota, and you're all above average, and it's Lake Wobegon.
This is true. I hate to admit it, but it's true.
And I come from the People's Republic of Massachusetts, but in places, for example, we heard a very impassioned discussion about what happened on the floor of the AMA. And if we're looking to really move the ball within the professional community of physicians, this seems like a wonderful possibility with some ground rules set up, but these discussions are had among separate groups, but not out in the open, and hospital administrators and others are very leery of having these. They're very afraid of having these discussions. Help us out if you have any experience with that or any thoughts about it.
I've done, through my organization, have done deliberative sessions with physicians. And in some ways, it's no different. You may want to set up the parameters a little different, where the facts are a little differently, because these, after all, are physicians and they do know what some research looks like. So the purpose may in fact be virtually the same as it would be for a town hall meeting of the general public or anybody who wants to show up. Though the purpose might be if you're gathering together, say, a group of physicians, all who work all under one medical group. They all work for the same IPA. And there's internal disagreement about how to deal with the issue, which everyone knows about, of overtreatment. And you want them to help be the problem solvers on how we're going to do it. Yeah, you absolutely can create a great discussion format, using a skilled facilitator who's outside the organization, come and lead a group through a process. There's nothing magic about it that makes it only applicable to the general public.
That's what I thought. This is very powerful. I think it's, and it has not been used very much at all. So it may be something that's worth considering on a larger scale as one approach to bringing people together. Very much impressed.
One of the
And let's start it in Minnesota first, and then you can give us some data.
I was thinking of Massachusetts, one of the M states anyway.
We'll call it the Lake Wobegon Conference.
Keep in mind, the first thing you're doing is defining what community you're talking about that you want to impact. And you're talking about perhaps a community of physicians, is either in one medical group or even maybe the whole community. But what are the boundaries of the community that you want to affect? That's
and in
the
essence,
first
it's
question.
community building as opposed to political activism as another potential use of this mechanism.
Okay.
Yeah, great.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Chung. I'm a third-year medical student from Yale. And thank you, Bill and Marge, and the volunteers for hosting this town hall meeting. So I just have a question. I noticed that it was very well run. There were lots of diverse ideas from diverse people. But one thing I noticed that it was very civilized. Like nobody was hounding on anyone's opinion or anything. And I'm just wondering whether that's reflective of quote unquote real town hall meetings that you've had from your experience, because every volunteer here came in with a persona, with not a script, but a character. So it's not like necessarily their own opinion. So civilized conversations, and whether that's reflective of other town hall meetings that you hosted in real life, and whether there are any other components of this demonstration that may not reflect or it differs from other town hall meetings that you've held. And I'm asking because I haven't participated in any town hall meeting, and this would be a good learning experience for me to see how real and how different this demonstration is.
Marge, you want to go first?
Ours are fairly structured, and we always start off with the ground rules. And the ground rules say, be respectful. We want to hear everyone's opinion. Your opinion is just as important as the next person's. But we're all part of one community, and it's important that we try to remain respectful of what other people are saying. And I rarely run into a problem of people being disrespectful of other folks. And if it gets out of hand, all you have to do is remind them of the ground rule.
Yeah, so the other thing is that careful, active listening and paraphrasing back, like, did I get it, did I get it? You could just see the temperature go down in some of the people. Yeah, you got it, somebody understands me. And then it's up there equally with everybody else. So that's really a key. And then you just have to be willing to say, I think we've heard from you, so let's hear from somebody else we haven't heard from yet. Who haven't we heard? No, I think, sir, So in other words, you set some structure on some folks.
I think we're almost out of time, so maybe we'll do a quick couple more. Yes.
Hi, thanks. My name's Jean Silvereisen, and I'm with the National Physicians Alliance. And the town hall that I went to that was most powerful to me was after the Newtown massacre in my county. And one of the things, obviously it was high stakes for the whole community and lots of folks were there. But one of the elements that was part of that I found powerful that I didn't see in this demo was we had the county executive there, the head of the PTA, the head of the school board, the head of the newspaper. There were sort of the people in the community of power, and they weren't there as discussants, but they were there as listeners. And I think that it added weight and respect to the participants in a way that they were given audience by the movers and shakers who could influence the topic under discussion. And I don't know how that might be structured into this topic without.
It's a once in a decade phenomenon. And of course, that was a terrible tragedy. When you get something so powerful that the mayor will come and sit in the audience and not be on a panel, that's huge. So yes, and if I have personal relationships, like the mayor has been in some of my town hall meetings in Minneapolis, but it's because I have a relationship with him. And people were very impressed that he came. But it's very hard to get those people. They want airtime. They want airtime. So you had something that brought the community together in such an amazing way. I don't think it's likely to happen around these issues.
So
They're going to want to shine.
Shannon, can we have another 5 minutes? No? Do we get another 5 minutes? We're supposed to be over at 3:30. Okay, next question.
My question is, do you plan and prepare for the disruptive participant, like the guy who's yelling in the back, like you saw during the political campaigns? What's your plan to deal with that? There's someone who's really disruptive, and you maybe have to bodily escort out.
Never run into it. The other thing, we never use open mics.
Yes.
Like that. In fact, the reason we used the mic was for you. Okay, so it's hard for somebody to do it. They're all sitting, it's face to face. But I tell you how not to do a town hall is to have a panel of experts and a couple of open mics. And then who gets up then is what I call the angry, the loud, and the disconnected. And then you're trying to manage them. They have the open mic, and they're ripping on somebody, and you're powerless. You're not even close to them. So I never do this in a town hall, ever.
Okay, we'll have 2 more questions. Sir, go ahead.
So Paul Haddis, Tufts Medical School. Two observations. We've used, both in the medical student teaching context, but also I'm a GBIO member in terms of intercongregational context, the University of Michigan's chat game, which has a different endpoint. It's not about overtreatment, but it's about putting together the elements of a health insurance plan and what's important to you. But 2 observations. One is, when we did it where people have to role play, which is the way the game is structured, and then later on they can be themselves, we found that a rich opportunity. That's
Nice.
one observation I'd make to you. The second is, and this was more true when we did it in the synagogue and church context, but if we had people with Medicaid cards sitting here who've historically, for example, experienced denial of care or under treatment, you have a different kind of conversation than you're dealing with upper middle class folks. And we saw in our GBIO context, where there is some amount of economic diversity, people weren't role-playing, or they did initially role-play, but then when it turned to their own live discussion, it was a richer discussion because you had that diversity in the room. So I'll just leave you with that thought.
Nice,
Thank you. Last question.
My name's Kim Witzak, and I'm from Minnesota. And I started an organization, Woody Matters, after the death of my husband. So I come as a patient. First of all, I want to say thank you to you guys for having such an interesting kind of conversation or an experiment. Because a lot of times I have gone to these things where you're out in the audience, and this is an opportunity for people, the real people and citizens, to have a voice. And instead of changing that model of thinking of the experts are in the front of the room as to the experts are in the room. So I encourage everybody here to be willing to listen and to hear things that maybe make them uncomfortable. But this is really a pulse and an opportunity to hear what the community really is saying, but also then to get ideas, and I'm going to participate with your workshop tomorrow, but to get ideas of what new ways of thinking. And I think this is where new ways of thinking can actually originate. So I just want to say thank you for doing this. So.
Thank you, Kim.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
And thank our participants here, everybody. All right. We applaud one another. Okay. Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys.
You
Great
were
job.
Great.
Yes.
You were born to the role.
Extremely
Yeah.
excellent.
I'm sorry?
No,
All right.